Okay, now let's talk about installing the engine into the rocket. When you pick up an engine, you'll notice that one end has a small hole bored into it, as opposed to the other end of the engine that does not. The engine, or the end with the hole, is actually the end that will be facing out of the rocket. So if I'm installing it into the Star Trooper right here, I want this hole to be facing out of the rocket. Okay. The procedure for installing the engine in the Star Trooper and the Mini Mosquito are very similar. What I've done with this engine is I have actually wrapped it in a roll of masking tape just once around. And what that does is that ensures that there is a snug fit into the fuselage, because it's really only the fuselage that is holding it on. So with that said, I make sure that the hole is facing out, and then it's just a matter of pushing this in. It should be a pretty tight fit, so it should be a little difficult to actually push in, and it should require some effort. Okay, but that's going to ensure that this engine does not actually come out of the rocket when the explosive charge goes off. We do not want that. Okay, so this would be actually this would actually be a successful installation for the engine in either the Mini Mosquito or the Star Trooper. Both work the same way. The Firehawk and the Bandito work a little bit differently, because they have an engine ring that actually fits onto the end of the rocket after you have installed the engine. So for that reason, I wouldn't need to wrap the tape around the engine. I just make sure that the hole is facing out, and then place the engine in there, and then this engine cap actually twists on. You have to find the right position where it will actually snap on, and it should twist once it's on. So once it's on, then give it a quarter turn twist to the right. And whoa, that was a little scary. I think no, I think it's on. Okay, I just ended up twisting the fuselage here. Okay, so that should be on now, and I can't pull this out. And there we go. That is a successful installation of the engine for the Bandito or the Firehawk. Now, what we have to do next is then we have to actually install the starter, because something has to ignite this fuel inside the rocket engine. So here is a starter. The first thing you want to do, I don't know if you can tell, yeah, the white background helps, is it is two wires that are taped together that come to a tip, and there's a little chemical on the tip. We want to make sure before we install this thing that those wires are not touching at any point except at the very tip. If they're touching anywhere else, then we have to make sure they're separated. Otherwise, we're going to create a short circuit, and our rocket is not going to fire. Okay. With that said, these wires look separated. That looks good. So then what I want to do is I want to insert the tip of the starter into the engine, and I need to make sure, and this is very important, that the very tip of the starter goes all the way in and touches the propellant inside the engine. If I don't do that, then it is not going to fire. Okay. Now that I have the starter all the way in as far as it will go, I take this little green starter cap and I will use it to plug the hole. And this is a little bit tricky part, because you got to make sure that the starter is not going to come back out. So I push it in a part of the way, and then I make sure that the starter is still pushed all the way in before I give a good push on that little starter cap. And I might need something smaller, like a pencil, to actually make sure that thing is all the way in. And there you go. The starter cap is now on. Okay, the last thing you want to do to install the starter is actually place this at a horizontal angle like this, because it's going to sit on the launch pad like this. And we also want to separate these two wires at the very bottom here, these two wires. So we want to separate those. Sorry for not being in the middle of my shot here. There we go. And just separate those two wires like so. Okay. You'll also have to do this, of course, for all of the models. All the models require a starter, all 4 of them. So there you go. Now this is ready to go onto the launch pad.